A case that strikes close to home for Dr. G.
You know, I have a son this age. I think, oh my gosh, you know, that's so sad.
Did the boy die by his own hand?
The father found him on the floor, and they find his karate belt around his neck.
Or was it a tragic accident?
I don't care what nobody says, David Cody didn't commit suicide.
I'm not here to necessarily make the family feel good. I'm still here to make the right answer.
And then, a visiting scientist from Russia mysteriously collapses in the middle of his lunch break.
We had a lot of news reports about a Russian being poisoned, and certainly, possibly, this is another poisoned Russian.
And when both the Russian embassy and the FBI get involved, Dr. G wonders if the dead man in her morgue was more than just a scientist.
Well, I think there's another mystery here.
At the District 9 morgue in Orlando, Florida, the graveyard shift has just begun when a call comes in from the Children's Hospital downtown.
Medical examiner's Carol.
A nurse reports the death of a 12-year-old boy named David Cody Hudson.
White male. From Leesburg. Okay. Who's his next of kin? His father?
Investigator Carol Crosby is dispatched to pick up the body.
I'll be on my way over. Thanks. Bye. I'm on my way to the hospital to pick up a 12-year-old who is suspected of hanging himself.
It's a beautiful day today, but I don't think I'm going to enjoy it. I know I have a young boy that looks like he hung himself. That's always hard. He's very young.
I have a son this age, and I think, oh my gosh, you know, that's so sad. Looks like he might have committed suicide. You know, it's just tragic. You know, life, you're just beginning.
Hey, Carol. How are you? Good.
As soon as she arrives at the morgue, Dr. G's first priority is to read through the investigator's report compiled by Carol Crosby the night before.
When the body first arrives, and I'm told that we have a 12-year-old boy that the police are investigating as a probable suicide. The father found him on the floor, and they find his karate belt around his neck, and the police think maybe he hung himself with the karate belt over the ceiling fan, which I actually see a lot of suicides that way with a ceiling fan. They were able to start CPR. The father was paramedic, and they were able to get him to a hospital. You know, he just didn't have any brain function.
According to hospital records, David Cody never regained consciousness. Within 24 hours, he was pronounced brain dead and removed from life support.
My granddaughter Alyssa called, and she says, she was crying, and she says, Grandpa, David Cody's killed himself. And I said, Alyssa, don't be calling me and telling me nothing like that. I said, that ain't funny. And she says, no, it's true.
He was 12 years old. Should have had his whole life ahead of him. I mean, I'll never see him grow up to be a man, get married,
David Cody, you're 5 today, right? 6.
For the Hudson family, the loss is staggering. The very idea that David Cody might have hanged himself is a concept that's nearly impossible to accept.
Suicide was never, the kid was saving up for a bicycle. He had other things going on. I mean, I don't think, David Cody didn't think so, suicide. If he did, he never displayed any of that sort of thing to me. I mean, he wasn't a depressed kid,
And I don't care what nobody says, David Cody didn't commit suicide.
Of all the cases I do, family members have a hard time accepting that it's a suicide. I mean, that's going to be our worst nightmare. But once again, I'm not here to necessarily make the family feel good. I'm still here to make the right answer. And ultimately, I think they want to know the truth, just like everyone else does.
Dr. G begins the difficult external examination of 12-year-old David Cody Hudson.
Oh, this is sad, don't you think?
Initially when you see him, he's a cute kid. He looks like a little all-American kid.
He's my son's age.
But he's got all the hospital paraphernalia, the tube down his throat, the tube going out his nose. And your heart goes out to him, your heart goes out to the family.
As she documents the condition of the body, Dr. G is looking for forensic evidence that will confirm whether or not David Cody committed suicide. But she's also looking for any signs that might hint at his emotional state. According to the police and the boy's father, David Cody had been grounded the weekend of his death.
He was on weekend restriction because he tried to skip school on Friday. He was actually picked up by the Leesburg Police Department and escorted to school.
I asked him, David Cody, how come you keep getting in trouble, boy? And he says, I don't know, I guess I just need attention, Grandpa. And he says it seems like the only time I get attention is when I'm in trouble.
These are some of the things that you look for when you're looking at a potential suicide. Are there any recent behavioral changes? Is there anything that's weighing on the person's mind, that would make them think that life is no longer worth living?
With children, there are sometimes indications, and they do usually look to adults to be able to help them out, so that they often may provide some drawing or some note. They're not necessarily very elaborate, but they often have also told people that they are interested in hurting themselves and told people that they're in a fair amount of pain.
I do know that there is some question of some, minor trouble. I know he's skipping school. We're gonna have to put the pieces together. Again, we let the facts kind of lead us to what happened and see what's going on.
There's also the possibility that if David Cody did commit suicide, it might have been a single spontaneous act.
A lot of times suicides are very impulsive acts, especially with young people. They get very angry at somebody, and especially somebody who they love, and they act out impulsively, and they don't sometimes even think about the long-term consequences. They're mad, they don't want this anymore, and they act impulsively.
Dr. G scrutinizes David Cody's body inch by inch.
Part of the role as a forensic pathologist is to confirm or deny the accounts of the witness. Does he have evidence of previous suicide marks on his wrists? Is he maybe a self-mutilator? Any signs of kind of psychological problems? Anything that would give us a clue of what's happening.
But she finds no scars that would suggest that David Cody attempted suicide in the past or suffered from emotional problems. Only injuries typical of a 12-year-old child.
There's some little scars on the knees, just like a kid, you have scars on your knees. Most boys do.
Yet she does find evidence to suggest the young boy did indeed hang himself. There is a large bruise on the back of his head, perhaps sustained when his body fell from the ceiling fan. And there are many broken blood vessels around David Cody's eyes, called petechia, sometimes seen in hangings.
He's got little burst blood vessels on his face and florid petechiae in the inner aspects of his lower eyelids. So it's looking like it is, some type of strangulation or hanging that has been resuscitated. We'll often see the really florid petechiae, a lot of them, once they have had some kind of strangulation and then they've survived and they try to do CPR. That seems to make them worse because you're then bringing blood flow to those areas that have already been starved of oxygen and have increased pressures, and that just makes the blood pressure, that makes the little petechiae worse, the little broken blood vessels. So then, after I do the general examination, I note these things. I will go then concentrate on the neck. What I see usually on hangings is a ligature mark, and then you have a suspension from that hanging. So it goes around your neck, but part of it's attached from the knot, and it has to be attached from the area of suspension. So the point of suspension will have an inverted V, and that's real classic.
But when Dr. G inspects David Cody's neck, that's not what she sees. Instead of an inverted V, Dr. G finds marks that are horizontal. And this raises troubling questions. Is it possible that the 12-year-old was strangled by someone else's hand?
His was very interesting. He has the marks in a band-like pattern, but it's horizontal all the way around the neck. The other thing that's interesting on his neck is that there's another mark there. It looks like from another ligature. That's not consistent with a suspension hanging, which is a little disturbing.
Dr. G has just completed the external examination of 12-year-old David Cody Hudson, who police believe committed suicide by hanging himself. But observations in the external exam aren't adding up.
Once I do that external exam and I see that the neck ligature is horizontal and he's got another ligature mark on his neck, and then he's got a nice abrasion on the back, it's just not sounding like a suicide hanging.
But if David Cody didn't hang himself, what happened?
Blow, boy, blow. Get him out. Hurry up and get him all out.
Waiting for answers is his devastated family.
Every time I close my eyes, I'm reliving the whole event all over again. My 6-year-old daughter talks about him quite a bit. Brings him up on several occasions, Might just say, my brother died, or I miss my brother, I wish he was here. Her roughest days are when it rains, She thinks David Cody's crying, because it's raining.
And David Cody was my buddy.
Twinkle, twinkle.
I mean, I was there when the kid walked. I was there when he cut his teeth. He was just like my own kid.
This boy is dangerous, let me tell you. David Cody, you're gonna hit yourself in the head in a minute.
Dr. G opens the body with a Y incision. She will first search for any signs of foul play.
I really don't suspect that. There's nothing to indicate that, but stranger things have happened. And I'm the final person that's really going to be looking at that body. I have to rule everything out. When we look internally, we're just looking for some subtle signs of trauma. I'll be looking for rib fractures. I'll be looking for head trauma. You know, and just, of course, just the general looking at his organs, making sure there's nothing else going on.
As expected, she finds evidence of a body kept alive on life support. David Cody's heart is pale due to low blood pressure, and his lungs show early signs of pneumonia, a common infection when on life support.
Okay, Sandy. All righty. You have any side you want? I'm a little fluid.
When you leave, I'm going over there.
Okay, he's got a little bit of fluid. This is...
However, there is no evidence of any internal trauma or disease, either in the abdominal or chest cavities. To completely rule out foul play, she then dissects the neck. If David were strangled, she would expect to find signs of trauma there.
The money's in the neck, without a doubt. The neck and the head. So when I do his neck dissection, it's a very tedious dissection. I take each strap muscle and I remove it and look for any evidence of hemorrhage either on the front of the muscle or the back of the muscle. And I look at the hyoid bone, which is where your tongue is attached. I looked at the thyroid cartilage, the back of it.
However, as she dissects the neck, Dr. G finds no trauma whatsoever.
The neck dissection was completely normal. All of the findings were on the external aspect of the neck.
The lack of any internal neck trauma rules out the possibility that he was strangled by someone else's hand. And given the horizontal ligature marks Dr. G found during the external exam, she does not believe David Cody hanged himself either.
I don't believe that he was suspended at all. I do not believe their theory that he's suspended at any point. So if they try to tell me that he's hanging, I can say no. Here it is.
But if David Cody did not hang himself and no one choked him to death, how did the 12-year-old boy die? There's only one place left to look: David Cody's brain.
So I do a head dissection, and because I really want to evaluate that abrasion, contusion on the back of the scalp. How bad is that? Is that really, could that have kind of added, insult to injury in this poor kid, and maybe causing a skull fracture or some brain trauma?
Dr. G removes the skull cap and reveals David Cody's brain. Immediately, she spots a critical problem. The boy's brain is grossly swollen, so much so that the organ has herniated downward into the spinal cord.
And it's swollen and it compresses out of the only space it knows, which is the bottom of the skull, where your spine comes out. The whole brain's kind of pushing through that because it's just under so much pressure from the swelling.
The massive swelling is without a doubt the cause of David Cody's death.
Once that herniates, it's incompatible with life. It's very difficult then to go on.
But oddly, Dr. G discovers that the swelling in the brain was not caused by trauma from a fall, but rather from lack of oxygen.
So the injury from the fall is minor. I mean, it's just a superficial injury.
The autopsy of 12-year-old David Cody Hudson is complete, and yet the circumstances of his death are still baffling. Though he was found with a karate belt around his neck and his brain was deprived of oxygen, Dr. G does not believe he hanged himself or was choked. So, what possibly could have led to the untimely death of this 12-year-old boy?
All kinds of things are going through your head at that time. You don't know. I mean, he was behind the door.
The only thing we know right now is things aren't making sense.
By 10:30 a.m., Dr. G has completed the full autopsy of 12-year-old David Cody Hudson. She is determined that he died from lack of oxygen, but is confident that he did not hang himself and was not choked by anyone else. But she's worried that the forensic findings, in particular the 2 horizontal ligature marks on David Cody's neck, might be an indication of another disturbing possibility.
I'm not liking what I see. I'm seeing a ligature that is completely horizontal. I see another mark on his neck that looks like a previous ligature mark. And I have a really young kid. The pieces are getting put together, and it's fitting another kind of subset that we occasionally see down here. Thankfully, not too often, but we do see it. I'm really worried that he may be doing this as a game.
The game that Dr. G fears might be responsible for the death of 12-year-old David Cody Hudson is known by many names, including suffocation roulette, space monkey, and perhaps most commonly, the choking game.
Believe it or not, some of the kids, and it's typically seen in this kind of really young adolescent boys, choke themselves as a game.
What the choking game is kids using some method to be able to deprive themselves of oxygen. Usually it's done with groups because it's easier to do that, or in pairs of kids. And they basically cut off their airwaves in some fashion. And they deprive their brain of oxygen, and as a result, they get involved with a brief period of unconsciousness, a brief period of altered state of consciousness, and kids like it. They find that it's something that's interesting, and they seek that out in some fashion.
But in order to determine if David Cody died from strangling himself while playing the choking game, Dr. G needs more than just a hunch.
How can I prove this? How do you figure out what this is? You know what? The autopsy didn't tell me the whole story. We need some good police investigation. I need to talk to the investigator that is going to investigate this. So as soon as I'm done with the autopsy, I march upstairs to my office and give the guy a buzz.
The investigator is Detective Richard Giles, a 17-year veteran of the Leesburg, Florida Police Department.
Dr. G and I, when we spoke the first time, we actually discussed the choking game. And I had heard of it, but she had more information on it at the time that I did, and kind of described it, and it's like, wow, you know what, this kind of seems like it's about the same thing, but it's something that we still got to check into, because I had to find something to corroborate it. I can't just say, this is what happened, without being able to corroborate, my findings in the investigation.
I tell him, you've got to talk to you've got to talk to his friends. There's somebody that knows something about it. And the detective did what I asked him to. I mean, some of them would have blown it off, but he found a friend. He found some of his friends that knew that he played that choking game.
They basically said that yes, that David Cody was participating in this game, as well as some of them. Some of the ones that I spoke with also participated in it. Sometimes it was done in pairs, sometimes it was done alone.
What's more, Detective Giles learns from David Cody's father that on the morning of the accident, there were odd marks on David Cody's neck.
Earlier in that day, they noticed a red mark on his neck, and he tells them that he got his neck caught in the covers that night. And that's, that's the tip-off.
I'm ready. Do it. Whoa! Strike one.
This confirmation is the last piece of the puzzle, and for Dr. G, the manner of David Cody Hudson's death is finally apparent.
I think it all adds up pretty clearly that this is not a suicide, that this is an accidental death.
The day of the accident, David Cody is grounded to his room for truancy. Based on the 2 horizontal marks discovered at autopsy and testimony from David Cody's friends, Dr. G believes that the young boy likely played the choking game early that morning, without incident.
He's got another red area that's horizontal and linear, looking like a second ligature mark in a whole different area.
But it's the second time playing the game that turns tragic. Alone in his room, David Cody wraps a karate belt tightly around his neck.
I've heard of kids, putting their hands around one another's necks. I've heard of also kids helping each other out by putting ropes or some kind of tie around their neck. And then there's also some kids where they just basically put a lot of pressure on each other's chests, either by hugging one another very tightly or sitting on one another to be able to kind of compress the chest and again make it impossible to get some oxygen into the body and into the brain.
Instantly, he begins to feel lightheaded. And then suddenly, within only seconds, he blacks out and falls to the floor.
It happens very quickly. You can pass out from just occluding your carotids in several seconds, 3, 4, 5 seconds. You can occlude those and pass out. Now that doesn't mean you'll die. If you released it really quick, you'd come back. But anything much more than that, you'll start having seizures relatively quickly when those carotids are occluded.
But David Cody's game goes awry. Unconscious on the floor, he cannot unwrap the karate belt strangling his neck.
Unfortunately, he passes out before he releases.
Without blood flow, immediately neurons in David Cody's brain begin to die.
The dad immediately removes the karate belt around his neck. They were able to start CPR, but the damage is already done.
Despite immediate life-saving measures, David Cody's brain is dying and begins to swell.
The brain will swell because it's injured from the lack of oxygen to the brain, to the neurons, to the other cells in the brain. And so as it swells, there is not a lot of places for it to go. In the hospital, they are desperate to try to keep that swelling down, but unfortunately it swells to the point where it herniates out of the only orifice that's left, and that's the one at the base of the skull where your spinal cord goes through, but that's also where your brainstem is, your respiratory centers, your cardiac centers that would cause your heart to beat. And so once that herniates, it affects your brainstem, and it's very difficult then to go on. And he dies.
Sergeant Giles came by here, gave me the actual police report, told me what Dr. G was gonna put on the autopsy report. I was kind of surprised and not surprised. I was surprised in the fact that that there was a game, but I wasn't shocked that David Cody had tried it. You know, I mean, he was an outgoing kid. You know, if his friends are doing it, he's gonna do it. But I just wished I'd known about it, or of its existence. You know, if I'd have known, if only I would have known.
I was totally shocked. I was shocked and mad. I mean, I was ready to call the President of the United States and tell him you need to do something about this crazy stuff that's going on. Kids are doing it in school. They're doing it on school buses. They're doing it everywhere, and kids are having fun at it. Well, there's a fun thing to everything, but there's also a bad side. The bad side is kids die from it.
I mean, this is just such a tragedy. It'd be a tragedy either way, whether he committed suicide or whether it was accidental. But I think this accidental is even more of a tragedy, because you can almost see your own kid doing it. I mean, it's just such a senseless death.
Since David Cody's death, his family has made it their mission to inform the public of the game and its deadly consequences.
I've got magnetic sign on one of my cars and on my truck. It's got David Cody's picture on there, and it's telling kids, don't play this game or you will die. You're gonna die, period. You're gonna die.
David Cody's death was ultimately ruled a tragic accident. But Dr. G's next case, the mysterious death of a Russian scientist, looks to be anything but accidental.
All of a sudden, we have the intrigue of could he have been poisoned, could he not? Why is he dying suddenly?
Today's being really busy. Today is, unfortunately, John Gilmartin's last day. We hate to see him go. Sandy, did you do this? We couldn't let you go without us saying a formal goodbye. So you can put that on your office wall.
Well, I'm not much for words, but it's been fun.
He's a pleasure to work with, and we're just lucky to have him for 19 years.
But Dr. G knows all too well that not everyone has a chance to say goodbye. Her next case is Dmitry Petrov, a visiting scientist from Russia who died suddenly yesterday afternoon, a world away from all of his friends and family.
Today we have a 55-year-old man from Russia who is here working temporarily as a scientist in one of the labs.
According to the investigators' report, Dmitry was a biochemist from Moscow who had just begun a 6-month sabbatical at a local Florida research facility. Yesterday, Dmitry was having lunch with a few of his coworkers when suddenly he collapsed.
He's in the process of eating and he just slumps over.
One of his colleagues immediately calls 911, and within 10 minutes, Orange County Fire and Rescue arrive and rush Dmitry to the ER. EMS technicians attempt to revive him several times, but their efforts are in vain.
They get him to the hospital, it pretty much pronounced him. So he died fairly quickly while he's eating.
Dmitry's colleagues have no idea what happened, and neither do the ER doctors. To make matters worse, the only people who can provide helpful information about Dmitry, his family or his doctor, are a long way away in Russia.
You know, the problem with autopsying foreigners or people who, you know, don't have a home here is that it's very hard to get information on them. Sometimes there's a language barrier. Sometimes we don't have access to their medical history. You know, here in the United States, I can just call their doctor up and say, what kind of medical history does this person have? What kind of medication are they taking? And I can get that information relatively easy. It's very difficult to get it for a foreign national. And so we just know less usually going in.
The fact that Dmitry is Russian also means that Dr. G will have to follow international protocol.
We do have to notify the embassy that he died. There's a diplomatic agreement with certain countries that we will notify their embassies of their foreign nationals, the deaths.
But the investigation into Dmitry's death lies squarely on Dr. G's shoulders. Fortunately, she discovers one detail in his file that suggests a possible culprit. Dmitry had recently flown to Orlando from Moscow on a 14-hour flight.
He certainly traveled a long way to get here from Russia. Maybe he was on the plane for a long time and has that dreaded traveler's disease of forming clots in your lower legs that break free and go to your lungs, and you die suddenly.
These clots, called pulmonary emboli, kill by cutting off blood flow in the lungs. They often develop during extended periods of inactivity, like long-distance travel, and can strike days or even weeks later with no warning. Dmitry died only 6 days after landing in Orlando, well within the danger zone.
He's eating in the cafeteria and he dies. So that's a possibility.
A possibility, but nothing more. The only way Dr. G can unlock the truth behind Dmitry's mysterious death is with her scalpel and hard evidence.
We'll see where the facts take us, see what answers the autopsy has. he looks pretty good. He looks the stated age of 55. I'm gonna hold it, I'll hold it.
Oh, that's okay, just go ahead.
Looks like he keeps himself in good shape.
But then, as Dr. G is examining Dimitri's legs, she notices a disturbing clue that reinforces her initial theory.
A little bit of edema, swelling of his lower extremities, which, may be due to pulmonary embolus. Maybe he's got a clot in his lower leg.
Did you take a picture of this, Ashley?
But before she has a chance to explore this angle any further, her assistant informs her that she's just received a phone call from the Russian embassy.
They are very interested in why he died.
And it seems another group is interested in Dimitri's death as well.
We even get a call from the FBI wondering why he died.
What is it about Dmitri Petrov that has suddenly piqued the interest of the Russian embassy and the FBI? The mysterious inquiries raise Dr. G's suspicions. Could there be more to Dimitri's death than meets the eye? Could Dmitri have been murdered?
About this time, we had a lot of news reports about a Russian being poisoned, and that certainly stirred the imagination that possibly this is another poisoned Russian. Okay, thanks.
The Russian embassy and the FBI both want to know what happened to the man lying in Dr. G's morgue, 55-year-old Dmitri Petrov, a visiting biochemist from Moscow who died suddenly during lunch.
It sounded a little mysterious to me, this Russian scientist temporarily working here and then found dead.
Not long before Dmitri arrived in the U.S., the news was abuzz with the story of a Russian spy who'd been killed by unwittingly ingesting thallium poison hidden in his food. Could Dmitri have met the same fate?
I really don't know much about the guy. I don't know why he's here. We don't know if he has any natural disease. We don't know if he has any natural enemies. I just thought it was a little odd that this Russian scientist all of a sudden ends up dead in my morgue.
Dr. G now wonders if the Russian and U.S. governments suspect foul play.
Certainly, with all the news reports that we'd had at this time with, Russians being poisoned, I would put that on my list.
She finds no external signs of an acute poisoning, such as a rash, but that hardly rules it out.
Somebody's poisoned, I don't always see any signs of external signs of poisoning.
Instead, she must rely on other means to determine if Dmitri was assassinated.
We do always do toxicology on a lot of our cases. And in this case, I certainly would take a lot of toxicology, more so than maybe I would normally.
Unfortunately, identifying a poisoning will be tricky. Some symptoms of toxic substances can mimic fatal medical conditions. Now, on the front lines of an international investigation, Dr. G must search for evidence deep within Dimitri's body.
I mean, all of a sudden we have the intrigue of could he have been poisoned, could he not?
Dr. G begins by making a Y incision from Dimitri's shoulders to his sternum and down to his pubic bone. To look for signs of poisoning, she keeps one sense on special alert: her nose.
I would smell when I open up the body any abnormal smells. It seems like he died relatively quickly, so I'd worry about cyanide, kind of an almond, bitter almond smell to it.
She reflects the skin and fat, exposing the abdominal cavity. And immediately, she discovers something horrific.
As soon as I opened this guy up, I said, oh my.
What shocks her is not what she smells, but what she sees.
He had tumors spread all over his abdominal cavity.
Dimitri's abdomen is riddled with dozens of tumors, ranging in size from the width of a penny to as large as $50.
I'm amazed that he looked so good on the outside for how much tumor he had on the inside. I mean, they're white and they're firm and kind of fibrous, and they're studying his omentum, the inside of his abdominal cavity. They're all over it.
Suddenly, Dr. G has uncovered a major suspect in Dimitri's untimely death: cancer.
Cancer is an abnormal growth, and it can happen in any organ in your body. The normal cells change into cancer cells by a mutation in their DNA, and then they lose the ability to have their growth under some kind of normal control.
Without medical intervention, these cancer cells can literally consume the victim's organs.
The patient will ultimately die from the cancer just overwhelming his body.
But surprisingly, in Dimitri's case, Dr. G isn't so sure that cancer is the killer.
First of all, just because they have cancer doesn't necessarily mean they have died from it. And he's eating there, having the time of his life, eating lunch, and then just keels over. Why is he dying suddenly?
And there's something even more inexplicable.
Why is a man with this horrible metastatic cancer not at home in hospice? I mean, is this story making sense? It isn't.
Dr. G begins extracting the abdominal organs of Dmitry Petrov, a Russian scientist whose bizarre death has intrigued the Russian embassy and the FBI.
Okay, let's see.
Soon, behind the stomach, she makes a crucial finding: the probable source of his extensive cancer.
The tumor appears to have started in the head of the pancreas, and it's about 3 to 4 inches, actually, in the pancreas and expanding, and then also encasing part of the bowel.
This could explain why Dmitry appeared unaware of his condition.
Pancreatic cancer tends to spread really quickly, and you just don't get much symptoms from it. And so unfortunately, most of the time when people find out they have pancreatic cancer, it's already spread.
Dr. G also believes that the type of cancer may reveal what struck him down so suddenly.
Going back to pulmonary emboli, pancreatic cancer is one of the notorious cancers of causing your blood to clot more easily. Clots form in the legs, just like you'd have the problems with travelers.
Dimitri's 14-hour flight from Russia already put pulmonary emboli on the list of suspects. Now, with pancreatic cancer in the mix, she's even more convinced that it's what ultimately killed him.
It would really make sense and very neatly packaged for me if that was the case. So that's really what I was expecting.
Next, she cuts into the lungs, searching for fatal clots. But to her surprise, she strikes out.
Well, unfortunately, he doesn't have any clots in his lungs. So that wasn't the cause of death either.
Suddenly, Dr. G's investigation hits a dead end. While the pancreatic cancer may look bad, in and of itself, it's still probably not enough to kill him so suddenly. But the FBI, the Russian embassy, and presumably Dimitri's family, far away in Moscow, are counting on her for answers.
So I really don't know exactly why he died yet. I need to finish the autopsy.
She now has 2 major organs left to examine: the heart and the brain. She begins with the heart, still in its pericardial sac.
The pericardial sac is kind of like the balloon that the heart sits in and pumps away, and it's usually got a little bit of fluid in that helps lubricate, that it moves easily over its covering.
Carefully, she cuts open the sac and immediately finds something alarming.
Blood has filled up in his pericardial sac, and I measure it, and it's 350 cc's of blood.
Dimitri's heart is trapped in a pool of blood that shouldn't be there.
Where's it coming from?
She extracts the heart for a closer look. And there, right on the outside, she sees it: a soft yellow patch of dead heart muscle and a 1/2-inch tear right through it. For Dr. G, The defect is all too familiar.
He's had a heart attack. Probably occurred 5 to 10 days out. Because I know that about 5 to 10 days, you start seeing yellow. The heart muscle is dying and softened, so soft that when the heart tries to pump and there's increased pressure, it blew out. It blew out that opening.
Deep within the heart, she can even spot what caused the attack.
I look at his coronary arteries, and sure enough, he has a thrombus or blood clot, which then totally blocks off blood flow to a segment of the heart muscle.
She can also see that he has coronary artery disease, a buildup of plaque. This means that the clot did not arrive from elsewhere in the body, as with a pulmonary embolus, but rather formed on the spot.
That plaque ruptured causes then a clot to form.
Her findings in Dimitri's heart add up to a sequence of deadly events that trump any possibility of a poisoning.
Ultimately, he died from a cardiac tamponade, compression of the heart from the blood in the heart sac, which is due to the rupture, which is then due to the thrombus in his coronary artery.
Finally, Dr. G can explain to the Russian embassy exactly how Dmitry Petrov died. It's just a few days before 55-year-old Dmitry Petrov is to begin an exciting sabbatical in Orlando, Florida. But as he prepares to board a plane in Moscow, little does Dmitry know he's in the crosshairs of 2 deadly diseases.
He has a tremendous cancer which is spread all over his body, appears to be from the pancreas, and he also has coronary artery disease.
Together, these conditions deliver a lethal blow. A major clot in his heart.
There's a good chance the cancer could have played a role in that it would have made him more apt to form that clot in that coronary artery.
By the time of his flight, the clot has completely obstructed the blood vessel, and Dmitry suffers a heart attack.
That segment of the heart muscle dies.
Incredibly, he survives all of this with no pain.
20–25% of heart attacks are silent. He has no symptomatology from his heart attack. He had no symptomatology from the cancer.
But just a few days after his safe arrival, Dmitry's body finally gives in.
The heart's still trying to pump, and the pressure was just too much. It tears open the muscle. Blood starts rushing out of the heart.
Blood fills the pericardial sac.
It surrounds the heart and compresses the heart. That heart can't expand anymore to pump.
Stifled, the heart eventually stops beating, and Dmitry collapses. Not poisoned by a secret agent, but killed by a devastating 1-2 punch of cancer and heart disease. Apparently satisfied by Dr. G's report, neither the Russian embassy nor the FBI calls again about Dmitry Petrov.
Never was determined why the embassy and the FBI were concerned about his cause of death. I could make a good story out of it, but I just don't know.
I knew you'd do what you have to get by.
It's unusual to have that much cancer and not know it. Certainly, if I had the cancer spread that he had, I don't think I would be wanting to work and go to another country.
It was the shift inside my own ribs. Either way, the silence no longer pressed against my throat. My eyes found the blank canvas first. The single brushstroke I'd left there looked like a scar. Faint, uneven, the beginning of something difficult. Then I turned toward Elisa's portrait. The smear across her cheek had dried into the paint, settling there like an echo of my collapse. Before, it had looked like proof of destruction. Now, it looked like truth. Flaws are a part of the story. I approached the portrait slowly, stopping at arm's length. The memory of my obsession still lingered, the fantasy, the hunger, the escape I had chased in the reflection of a woman who deserved better than my longing. But now, the portrait felt different. Not an idol, not a trap. Just a reminder of her grief, of his death, of my part in it, of the humanity I had run from for so long. I bowed my head, a gesture that felt simple and honest. Not reverence, not shame, just acknowledgement. "I'm not what you saw," I whispered, "but I'm trying to see it anyway." Then I turned back to the self-portrait. Painting myself wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cathartic. It wasn't a revelation. It was slow. It was uncomfortable. It was precise. I painted the outline first, hesitant, uneven, almost apologetic. A man who had spent years hiding behind orders and silence. Then the eyes. Not heroic, not monstrous, just tired. Haunted, yes, but awake. Then the mouth. Closed, steady. A man learning how to speak without collapsing. Every stroke felt like saying, "Here I am. This is the truth. This is the cost. This is the beginning." It took days, maybe weeks. Time blurred into the rhythm of breath and pigment. But when it was done, truly done, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day I enlisted. Stillness. Not peace, not pride, just stillness. A quiet that didn't ask anything of me. The counselor stopped by the studio, hands tucked behind his back. He looked at the self-portrait for a long time. Silence stretching between us. Finally, he asked, "What do you see?" I swallowed. "I see the man who did it," I said, "and the man who can't undo it." A pause. "But I also see the man who's willing to carry it." He nodded once. "Then your work has begun." The day the program concluded, they gathered all the portraits in the central hall. Families were invited again, fewer this time, some curious, some hesitant, some trembling with old wounds. I didn't expect Elise to return, but she did. Her hair pulled back, her clothes simple, her expression unreadable. She walked past my self-portrait without looking at me, stopped in front of her own, tilted her head slightly, studying the smear, not with disappointment, but with a soft sadness. She whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she turned toward me. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. Two people connected by a wound neither of us could repair. Finally, she approached. I braced myself. For anger, for accusation, for anything that would make sense. Instead, she said, "I came because I needed to see if the man who painted this," she gestured at her portrait, "is the same man who stood in my home that night." My throat tightened. "He's not," I whispered, "but he remembers him." A long silence, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I can't forgive you," she said softly. "I'm not here for that. I didn't come for forgiveness." "What did you come for?" I swallowed hard. "To tell the truth," I said. Her eyes softened, not with approval, not with absolution, just with understanding that truth itself is its own labor. She nodded once, a small gesture, a humane one. Then she stepped back, turned away, walked toward the exit. But at the door she paused. Without looking back, she said, "Keep painting." And then she left. When the hall emptied, I returned to the studio one last time. My self-portrait waited. Not flattering, not forgiving, just real. A man made of guilt. A man made of intention. A man learning to live between both. I touched the frame gently. "I'll keep going," I whispered. Not for redemption, not for escape, not for fantasy, but because the truth finally had a place to live, inside me, not as a wound, but as a witness. And for the first time in my life, I felt the faintest pull of something that wasn't guilt, wasn't despair, wasn't self-destruction. Acceptance. Quiet, imperfect, simple acceptance. A beginning. Not clean, not pure, but human.